Hello, and thank you for joining me in my third challenge so far through our little coding challenge here. I'm really excited about this one because, as you can see, Obi's face. It's a Star Wars theme challenge, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. If you haven't noticed, the goal of this one is to create a search tool. It basically be able to search Star Wars movie scripts. So this is kind of combining my huge fandom and geekdom of Star Wars alongside with learning, which is a great way to learn. I actually got a lot more done in this challenge than I did in the other challenges because it was just so much fun to keep diving into this. So real quick, the requirements. This is just a search tool, far from Google, right? We're not trying to create a Google. I didn't create a search engine or a big deep index or anything like that. So just be aware of that. I'll mention that a few more times. So our app here should be downloading the scripts from Star Wars, so just the OG movies. Accept a single keyword to search against. We should return the results highlighting or somehow showing the keyword is there and in context of those sentences or the words around that keyword, and we want to return the first 10 results. Extra credit was great. It was kind of like a just go, right? Go and build the search engine out more. So you could add things like paging or large content blocks, or I added more metadata to mine. Add sorting capability, add relevancy. I'm really excited for that one. Or even include all the scripts from the Star Wars movies and add filtering and things like that. So certainly had a lot of fun here. I did all of the ACs and most of the extra credit ideas. Unfortunately, I was not able to do this one because the three scripts that were provided are very structured into three columns. These we can't find the other Star Wars movies in this format. They're in a typical movie script format, so I wasn't about to parse all that or anything and try to figure that out. So we just stuck with these three movies for now. So let's get to it. I'm going to pull up Postman and we'll take a look at how this works. So I have a search endpoint with the keyword. So I'm going to go ahead and search for a keyword. Oh, droid. This is always a fun one. And you'll see that I get my results. I get 37 results back. Starting index is 0, page size is 10, so that's page 1. If I go to page 2, starting index would be 10, page size would also be 10, and so on and so forth. My results, I've got my basic description of the keyword, the match. So I'm using a strong tag. Obviously, this is just plain text in a ID in my Postman, so it's not really highlighting it. But if this was to be used on a front end or something like that, you could wrap it with these HTML tags. We have a relevancy ranking that I'll get into in a little bit, and then we also have all this metadata from the movie. This is basically the 4 bits of information we get from that movie text file, right? The text file, which is what movie it is, what line this was spoken in, who said it, and what the full context is. So I included all of that here. At the bottom of this, you see we have filters, so the user can then narrow in. I would just want to look at one filter or one movie, and I can see that this movie has 27 results with it. And same with the character. I can narrow in on who spoke what, and you'll see we have this idea. Well, not idea. We have a bartender, and so I'm going to go ahead and search for the bartender, or add a filter for bartender and see what bartender spoke droid, right? So hit send, and I bet you all know where I'm going with this. Your droids, they'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here. So we're able to kind of dig in and see that kind of information, which is really neat. This is where I started geeking out, where I'm just like, oh, right, not try. I bet you know what movie or what quote I'm looking for here. Oh, I misspelt it, which is good. I got a 204, right? So I was able to kind of figure out how to return the right type of responses. So this is saying there's no match. Try again. There is no try, I think is the right keyword. There we go. There is no try. No, try not, do or do not, there is no try. So there's that famous quote right there. I was able to find that and pull that up. Pretty cool. You'll notice that, let me search for force. This is a pretty popular word. Relevancy, I erred on the side of the dark side. I don't know why. I'm a dark side kind of guy, I guess. So the relevancy is dark side strong, because the dark side is very strong. And so anybody who's on the dark side has more weight than anybody who's on the light side. So the Emperor and Vader are the two top. They have a much heavier ranking than whoever would be next. Actually, that's it for this page. I'm going to go ahead and load up all the results, all 48 results in one page list here. So we'll see that the Emperor and Vader are at top. And as we go through it, you see Yoda's the next. You'll see Vader has a weighting of 130. He has a weighting of 120. The other big factor into weighting is the movie. So I put the weighting of movies in my preference. I love episode 6 the most, so that gets the heaviest. Episode 4 is my least favorite out of the 3 OG, so that gets the lowest weighting. But because it's Vader in the lowest movie, he still weighs more than Yoda in my favorite movie. And so you'll see that the weighting numbers continue to drop. And I'll show how the relevancy works in a little bit. It's actually rather interesting to also take a look at some of the character names in here. As a fan, you see things like Dodonna. I don't know who they are. I know who Akbar is, but I don't know who that is yet. But anyway, that is search working. And then you could certainly spend a lot more time following up with stuff like love. Guess what I'm looking for, right? Han saying, I love you. Or kiss. And the character was Leia. I can search for that and say I'd just soon as kiss a Wookiee. So this was just a lot of fun being a fan of the movies. But that's not why we're here. We're here to look at code. So let me pull up the code set and we'll dive into that. All right. So that's my server running. Here's my controller. So I have one endpoint for all the searching, and that is receiving a lot of parameters. Obviously, a keyword parameter, the 2 parameters I need for paging, and then my 2 filter parameters. Keyword is the only required keyword, the only required parameter, because you can't search without a keyword. There's no such. I don't believe in blanket searching because that's just crazy. Now, you might argue, what if I just want to apply filters? Sure, you could do that, but not right now. I didn't build it to support that. So if you don't provide a keyword, you'll get an error. I did figure out custom error handling, so this is my own custom little error API exception. I'll go into how I built that in a moment. And I send back the words keyword is missing with an HTTP status of bad request. I then download files. I mentioned this before. This is not a real search engine. I did not build a database or anything like that. So every time you make an API request, I'm downloading those 3 text files. Terrible design, terrible idea. Never, ever, 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 ever do this because that's just a ridiculous amount of overhead. I should download it once and cache it, or better yet, download it and load it into a database and parse it and all that stuff. But for the sake of this challenge, I was learning. So I understand the architecture. I understand how to do it. I was learning more coding patterns. So I wanted to learn how to download files, right? So I did it within this API call. So again, I have deeply apologize if this offends you that I would do this in every API call. But that's the case. That's just what I did. But this is pretty straightforward. I have the 3 files here, and I can download them directly to the folder, 3 search data. So we have a data folder here with our 3 text files, looking the same as what I showed before. And so that all that does is download the files, and then we start in on the search result. So the search result's a custom object, and it just has these simple fields, highly relying on Lombok. So Lombok has been great because I can do things like this and just add the properties and write some getter setters. If you're a Java developer, chances are you already know Lombok. If you're following along with me and learning as we go, check out Lombok. Just Google Lombok and you'll learn more about it. It writes all the stuff for us, which is really nice. And this model extends the representation model, which we use for HadeOS, as you can see here. So this is our primary search result that we got back in our response. So we start setting some of those values, and then we do our search. When we do the search, we send in the keyword, movie, and character, and we get this create searchable data. Again, because I downloaded the files, I'm doing all this on the fly. This would be better stored in a database, and you do a query against the database or against a high-speed index or something like that. But because of time constraints and learning, I did this locally. So create searchable data basically iterates through those text files and parses them and creates a list of data entry objects. So it's going to loop through the files. It's going to loop through each line in every file, and it parses it out by the quotes in a space. And based upon the position of this pattern, it knows that the first instance of this is the position value, second instance is the character, third instance is the dialogue of what the character said. If you get any other issue, then we'll just log out an error here. This regex does not parse if your dialogue has a quotes in it, a double quote. I messed around with it a little bit, couldn't figure it out, but it is only 2 quotes that are missing now. So you see down here, I log out what's missing, and Leia saying he means you're welcome, which doesn't really, that's not a great script line. But this one here was kind of meaningful. I remember seeing this in the movie when they're in the command room or the control room on the Death Star, and R2-D2's beeping and beeping and beeping, and 3PO says, I'm afraid I'm not quite sure, sir. He says, I found her. He keeps repeating she's here, talking about Princess Leia. So this is a pretty good quote. I kind of miss it in the app, but for the sake of what we're doing here, it's okay. And then we set the movie based upon the file name. So you may have noticed when I was doing the filtering that we have .txt in here. I got lazy. That's just the file name. Obviously, I could parse that out and do it correctly, but it's so minor, I just kept it in there. So that's all this function is doing, is looping through all 3 text files, all those lines, and creating us a lovely list of objects, of data entry objects, which has a character, the dialogue, the movie, and the position, those 4 properties. And I have a couple supporting methods in here that I'll get to this one in a moment. So that, let me keep this file open. There you go. So that returns all the data. And now we do the search against this data source. Again, it should have been a database or something else. So we loop through that long list of all 3 movies. And as we're looping through, we check, is the movie filter empty or null? If it is, great, no big deal. Don't do anything. If it's not, then we want to apply that filter. So we're checking, does this item movie match the filter? Does the character match the character filter? And does the dialogue have an index of this keyword, right? Does this keyword exist anywhere in the dialogue? Pretty lightweight comparison there. Then we do this lovely regex, which was more work than I wanted it to be. But basically, we have the keyword in the middle, and because I wanted to grab the 2 words before the keyword and 2 words after the keyword, we do that here. So this is kind of a blanket catch-all of all letters and numbers and special characters, everything that I saw that was in the script. And these curly braces say 0, 1, or 2 instances of this. And then on the flip side, we say the same thing. It's basically the same code. Wrapped closer is punctuation, is like the sentence before it just ended, or it's a comma or something like that, or apostrophe RE if it's you, apostrophe RE, or something like that, plural, stuff like that. So that's how I've been handling that here. So the core keyword's here, and it'll find it if there's a suffix after it. And then we do a match using regex against the dialogue script, and if it finds it, which it usually does, we create a result item. And a result item is text, the rank, and the data entry, which is from that long list of data. So that is creating a result item, and when we set the text, I replace the keyword with the keyword wrapped in strong tags. So that was one of the ACs. We set the data, which is the data entry object. So all that extra metadata from the database or from the data source is now tagged with that. And then we add that there. If for some reason this fails, I don't think I've had this happen yet, but if this is true, but this is not true, we then just log out saying we can't find it. But I don't think I've actually hit that error message yet. And that's basically it for searching. After we do all the searching, quote, filtering down a result set to a limited number, we apply relevancy. And this is where some things got really fun. Relevancy. So I have a relevancy.json file, and as I mentioned before, I lean towards the dark side. So you see in here, Vader has 100. 3PO is -10. I can't stand 3PO. He whines, he complains, that's all he does. Out of the OG, he's my least favorite. Out of all 9, 12 movies, he's my second to least favorite. I think Jar Jar Binks is the worst thing to ever happen to Star Wars. That's my opinion. I hope you don't hate me for it. But Jar Jar's not in the OG, so I don't have him listed here. Jabba's got a higher one because he's a bad dude. Luke's lower because he's a good dude. So that's how I lean this. Emperor's got 100. Han, I should have maybe went with 50 because he is a scoundrel. He is a smuggler, but we all know he's a good guy at heart, so I left him kind of lower. But yeah, so this is my relevancy. Stormtrooper is a bad guy. Maybe he should have been a little higher. Boba Fett's high, of course. And then I also scaled the movies out of my preference. I like Episode 6 the most. The Return of a Jedi, I think that was one of the best out of the three of them, so I give it the highest score. And my least favorite is A New Hope, Episode 4. So this is my personal relevancy, leaning towards the dark side. I suppose Empire Strikes Back should have been higher if it's truly dark side, but anyway. So I take that JSON file, basically loop through the results, and I find the relevant weights, and then I kind of build this score. I continue adding to the score for everything that makes it relevant, and then we set the score, and that's how we get a score value here, the ranking. So that's the relevancy. And then we sort it. This was a fun little thing to figure out. I'm sorting it by using, you may have noticed it, I'm implementing a comparable, and we just have a compare to. So this is just sorting it by rank. That was neat. And then we return the results here. So now we have this list of result items, which has all of my results that match. And then we get the size. So this would get 37, 47, 80, whatever. We add a HeyDOS link to itself, and then we check the size. If the size is greater than 0, we'll continue parsing the data and getting it ready. If it's less than 0, we just return a no content saying there's no results. Like there's nothing more to tell you or give you. So here we do, if it's more than 0, we use copy of range to get the page. So starting at the index provided and then adding the page size to that index number, we get the results to return. This worked really well. The only oddity with this is if this number here exceeds the amount of data you're giving it. So if I have 9 or 8 results and I say page size is 10, it gives me 2 null objects to make up for the 2 missing items. So then here I'm just filtering out the nulls to get rid of the nulls because I don't need null objects being returned. Thought that was a little wonky, but it works. We then set the results value for the response. And now we're adding filters. So filters, go to definition. Filters, we have 2 right now, movie and character. And we basically are looping through and getting the filter for each one of those movie and character. All this is doing is looping through all the results, creates a hash map, and sets the hash map key to be the name of the value, and then the integers to be the count of how many there are. So this is how we get our filters. Let me remove that for a moment. This is how we get our filters like this. The movie name and then count of 3. Character to Han and Leia 1 and 2. So that's where this is happening. I use a hash map value so I can get kind of the uniqueness of it. This was a nice, clean, and easy way of doing that. And then after we get the hash maps, I convert that to a filter value object. And the filter value is super light, value and count, and it's comparable. So that allows me to then sort it, and then we set the values for the filter. We return that filter, and then set that to the return object. And then we add 2 more ADOS links. One note on the filtering piece, get value by name. So because of the dynamic nature of this, right, the parameter of the object could be movie, could be character. Now with JavaScript, I would have done something like data movie, right, to get the parameter name called data. Oh man, called movie, or the parameter name called character, right? That's what I would have done in JavaScript. That's what I know. Java, it's not that simple. So I created a little method called get value by name, which allows me to send in a string value and return the appropriate property. Don't know if this is the best way. It is working. It feels kludgy. I'll post this on my blog as well. Curious if you think there's a better way. If there is a better way of doing this, let me know, because I think I would love to know how to do that better. Yep, and then we return it. I mentioned the error handling before, so a few of my functions will return API exceptions. I use that because it allows me to, one, specify a custom error message and specify a custom HTTP status code if needed. I don't have too many of the status codes that are unique, but as we try to get filters, if there's an error, right, I can put an actual specific error message in here so I know where it failed. I can explain what happened, and then I could provide a error code. Probably the better example is up here is if the keyword's missing, we say bad request. And so the exception, the API exception object extends the exception object there. And don't need that. And it's a basic exception where I've added the HTTP status. I was going to just return this to the front end, to the consumer, but I get a lot of other fields I don't need. I get stack trace and suppress this and all this other nonsense that I really don't want to give the consumer. I started adding those as properties manually here, and then adding the JSON ignore to it, which worked until I got to one field that it stopped working. Instead of returning this API exception, I created another object, API error response, and that just has exactly what I want to return, a message in the status code. So you'll see here that in both catches, I convert the error message to this API error response, and I return that to the user. In the case of an API exception being caught, I use the status code that was specified, and any other error that's not caught anywhere else, I'm just doing an internal server error. We can see the errors in play here. If I was to do start index greater than the amount of items, right? So the index value is just way too high, that should throw an error. So that's a much nicer error than a full stack trace and all that other nonsense. Or if I don't include the keyword, you also see a nice clean error here. So that wraps up the API. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If I had countless time and a dev team, I'd build a really cool search engine on top of it, or look to a third-party solution, appliance or something to provide the search experience, and we would build an API on top of it. Certainly not breaking any innovation grounds here, but it was just super fun to be playing with Star Wars data, super fun to be learning Java as I go. Again, I look forward to comments and feedback. You can comment on my YouTube video. You can hit me up on Twitter, comment on my blog. I just want to learn. I want to figure out how to do this better. If there's anything in this code that looks bad, or you think I'm doing it wrong syntaxically or what have you, please let me know. I greatly appreciate it. This is challenge 3 of 6, so we're halfway through. We have 3 more left. I'm super excited to continue on with you. Thank you all so much.